It was a cool evening in Washington, D.C., when Ibrahim Traoré, the young leader of Burkina Faso, took the stage at an international summit. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered, and world leaders watched closely. What no one expected was the raw emotion that would fill the room. Ibrahim's voice was steady, but carried the weight of his country's struggles: poverty, conflict, and the hope for peace. His words painted vivid pictures of families torn apart, children hungry, and dreams deferred. The audience was silent, no applause, only the quiet sound of hearts breaking. Among those watching was Kamala Harris, the U.S. Vice President. Her face tightened, her eyes began to water. For the first time on a global stage, Kamala showed a crack in her usual composed exterior. It was a moment so human, so real, it instantly went viral. This speech wasn't just about politics. It was a cry for humanity, and it touched a nerve deeper than anyone imagined. Ibrahim Traoré was only 37 years old, but already he carried a heavy burden. Burkina Faso had faced years of violence, drought, and economic hardship. As a former soldier and a man of the people, Ibrahim knew the cost of every choice. He remembered the faces of mothers who lost their children to hunger. He remembered the villages burned down by extremists. Yet, despite this darkness, he believed in change. With every word he spoke that night, Ibrahim wasn't just asking for help, he was promising hope. His voice cracked when he spoke about the future. "Our children deserve to dream," he said softly, "not to live in fear." That line struck Kamala Harris hard. She too had children and grandchildren. She understood the pain of a parent's fear. For a moment, the powerful world leaders felt the weight of Ibrahim's promise. They saw a man fighting not for glory, but for survival and for peace. As Ibrahim's speech ended, the cameras zoomed in on Kamala Harris's face. Tears rolled down her cheeks, glistening under the bright lights. It was a rare and beautiful display of vulnerability from a woman often seen as strong and unshakable. Social media exploded. Clips of Kamala wiping her tears were shared millions of times within hours. People from every corner of the globe expressed their surprise and admiration. Why was she crying? What had Ibrahim said that moved her so deeply? Some speculated it was political strategy, but many others believed it was something more: a genuine connection between two leaders from very different worlds, united by shared humanity. Comments flooded in. "Finally, a leader who feels the pain. This is what real leadership looks like," and tears that speak louder than words. The moment became a symbol of hope, that empathy could still exist at the highest levels of power. Ibrahim Traoré's words didn't just speak about today. They echoed through the past. Burkina Faso's history was marked by struggle, colonization, and constant fight for identity. Ibrahim carried that legacy on his shoulders. Every hardship faced by his people was personal. He remembered stories from his childhood, elders telling of times when hope was a distant dream. He was raised in a humble village where children played among dust and dreams. Many never made it to adulthood because of sickness or conflict. In his speech, Ibrahim reminded the world that Burkina Faso wasn't just a forgotten dot on the map. It was a nation with pride, courage, and an unbreakable spirit. "We are not victims," he said, voice steady but fierce. "We are survivors." Kamala Harris listened intently. She knew the stories of struggle well from her own country's story, but hearing them from a young leader fighting for his people made it real. It was impossible not to feel the weight of what Ibrahim carried and the hope he was asking others to share. The summit hall was quiet, except for Ibrahim's voice. The camera caught Kamala Harris leaning forward, her eyes fixed on him, her hands clenched lightly in front of her. When Ibrahim paused, Kamala exhaled slowly, tears brimming but held back. The usually composed vice president seemed to carry the entire room's emotion within her. She had seen many speeches before, but this one was different. It pierced through politics and touched something deeply human. For many watching live, it was a shock. A leader showing emotion on such a public stage was rare. Some whispered, "Is this real?" Others said finally, "A glimpse of the heart behind the office." Kamala's tears were not a sign of weakness, but strength, a connection to suffering and hope. The world saw that tonight, and it changed how people saw both Ibrahim Traoré and Kamala Harris forever. Within minutes of the speech ending, social media lit up like wildfire. Clips of Kamala Harris's tearful reaction spread across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Memes, heartfelt comments, and thousands of shares exploded everywhere. Journalists debated the meaning. Was it political? Was it personal? But most people didn't care about politics. They saw something real, raw, and rare. People began sharing their own stories of struggle and hope alongside the videos. The hashtag Tears for Burkina trended worldwide. Ordinary people from students to grandmothers connected with Kamala's emotions. It wasn't just about one speech. It was about shared pain and shared dreams. Ibrahim Traoré's message had found its way into millions of hearts, sparking empathy where often there was indifference. For a moment, the world felt smaller and more connected. As Ibrahim Traoré spoke, his words painted pictures, not just of struggle, but of real people face etched into his memory. He talked about Amina, a young mother who walked miles each day to find clean water for her children. He spoke of Yahya, a boy who dreamed of school, but instead found himself working fields to feed his family. These stories were not statistics. They were lives. Ibrahim's voice trembled slightly as he shared the hopes and fears of his countrymen. Each name carried weight. Each story, a thread weaving the fabric of Burkina Faso's reality. Kamala Harris listened, her eyes fixed on the screen where Ibrahim's image was projected. In that moment, the room felt smaller. These weren't distant problems anymore. They were human stories, and she was part of the global audience now bearing witness. The emotions were raw, the pain palpable. Kamala's quiet. Tears showed the world that leadership meant carrying the weight of these stories, even from thousands of miles away. After the speech, many world leaders rose to applaud, but none seemed as moved as Kamala Harris. Later that evening, she quietly reflected on the young leader's words. Her advisors noticed the unusual silence in the room when she spoke less about policies and more about people, the mothers, children, and families in Burkina Faso. It was a quiet storm of empathy rippling through discussions and plans. This vulnerability became a turning point. Kamala, known for her strength and resolve, showed that even the toughest leaders could be touched by compassion. It challenged the coldness often expected in politics and inspired conversations about how empathy could reshape diplomacy. Across the globe, people watched this change unfold, hopeful that a new kind of leadership was rising, one where tears were not weakness, but courage. Ibrahim Traoré's speech proved that one voice could be louder than the noise of politics. His courage to speak honestly about his country's pain and hopes echoed in the hearts of millions. Kamala Harris's tears weren't just a reaction. They were a reflection of a shared humanity. It reminded the world that behind every headline, every policy, there are real lives hanging in the balance. This moment sparked a ripple effect. People began sharing their own stories of hope, struggle, and dreams. It wasn't just about Burkina Faso anymore. It was about the power of connection, the strength found in understanding. The speech and Kamala's reaction became a symbol. When leaders dare to show their humanity, they open the door to true change. As Ibrahim Traoré continued, he shared the silent cries of his nation, whispers of pain that the world often ignored, families torn apart by violence, children missing meals, and schools closing their doors because of fear. He spoke of villages where nights were filled with uncertainty and days with hard labor just to survive. Our people do not ask for pity, he said, voice low but fierce. We ask for justice, for peace, for a chance. These words echoed beyond the summit room. They were a plea from a leader who knew his people's pain intimately, not just a politician. But a son of Burkina Faso speaking for Faso had no voice. Watching Kamala Harris, one could see the weight of those silent cries settle in her heart. Tears welled up again. Soft, but unstoppable this time. She wasn't just a leader, she was a witness to a pain that transcended borders. The world had heard Ibrahim's cry. Now, it had to decide how to answer. After the speech, Kamala Harris found a quiet moment alone. The tears she shed were not just sympathy, they were a deep, aching empathy. She thought of her own family, the struggles and sacrifices her parents made. She thought of mothers in distant lands who bore pain silently, just like those Ibrahim spoke about. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her. She realized leadership was more than policies and speeches. It was about feeling the pain of others, carrying it with grace and acting with courage. Kamala's vulnerability was a reminder to the world. Even those in power carry hearts that break, tears that fall, and hopes that burn bright. Her rare public emotion sent a message. True leadership is human. It is connection, compassion, and courage in the face of pain. News outlets around the world picked up the story. Analysts debated, politicians commented, but the public watched with heavy hearts. Why did Kamala Harris cry? They asked. The answer was simple yet profound. Because sometimes the truth hits so close to home, it can no longer be contained. Social media was flooded with messages of hope, sorrow, and calls for action. Ibrahim Traoré's speech and Kamala's tears became a symbol, a reminder, that behind global politics are real people with real pain and dreams. The moment sparked a global conversation about empathy, leadership, and the power of a single heartfelt voice. And for many, it was the beginning of a long overdue change. Ibrahim Traoré's journey wasn't easy. Behind the powerful speech was a man burdened with the weight of his nation's suffering. Every decision he made was a delicate balance between hope and harsh reality. He remembered nights spent awake thinking about the families displaced by conflict, the children who went to sleep hungry, and the teachers who risked their lives to educate the next generation. His heart ached for them. Yet he stood strong, knowing that his voice on the global stage was their voice too. He believed in leading with honesty, courage, and compassion, even when it meant showing vulnerability. In Kamala Harris's reaction, he saw the power of shared humanity, how leaders, no matter where they came from, could be united by empathy. For Ibrahim, this was more than politics. It was a calling, and despite the pressure, he held on to hope with every word he spoke. The emotional speech sparked more than just tears. It ignited conversations worldwide. Grassroots groups, activists, and ordinary citizens began demanding change. In cities from New York to Paris, people gathered to discuss how to support Burkina Faso and other struggling nations. Fundraisers were organized, and social media campaigns launched with heartfelt messages inspired by Ibrahim's courage. Even political leaders who rarely showed emotion began to reconsider how they addressed global crisis. Kamala Harris's visible empathy challenged the norm, proving that compassion could drive policy. This moment reminded everyone that behind international relations were human lives, and that hope when shared could cross oceans. The ripple effect was clear. One speech, one leader, one tear could start a wave of change. But the journey was far from over. Behind the scenes, Ibrahim faced intense pressure and personal sacrifice. Long days and sleepless nights tested his strength. He thought often of his family, how his late father's wisdom guided him, how his mother's resilience inspired him, and how his people's trust fueled his resolve. At times, the weight felt unbearable, but he never allowed despair to win. His message was clear. Leadership is sacrifice, but it is also love. Love for one's people and the belief in a better tomorrow. Kamala's tears reminded him that he was not alone across the world. Others shared his burden silently, united by hope and determination. The image of Kamala Harris wiping away a tear wasn't just a fleeting moment. It became a symbol of a world awakening to shared pain and hope. News anchors replayed the clip over and over. People everywhere saw that beneath the weight of power, even leaders break down when faced with truth. For Ibrahim Traoré, it was a bittersweet victory. His speech had pierced the armor of global indifference, but the road ahead was still long and uncertain. Yet the tear had done something incredible. It had opened a door to empathy, to understanding, and to a new chapter of international relations grounded in humanity. The world's gaze shifted toward Burkina Faso, no longer as a distant crisis, but as a call for compassion and action. This tear sparked a revolution, not of violence, but of the heart. In the days after the speech, Ibrahim Traoré received messages from around the world. Leaders, activists, and everyday people inspired by his courage. But beyond the global stage, he returned to the streets of Ouagadougou, meeting with families, children, and elders who reminded him why his fight mattered. He spoke of rebuilding, not just infrastructure, but trust and hope. "We will rise," he promised. "Together, we will rewrite our future." His His words were a balm for a weary nation, and Kamala Harris's tears had become a beacon lighting the path toward global solidarity. The promise was clear. No matter how heavy the burden, love and courage could carry a nation forward. As this story comes to a close, remember this: real leadership is about heart, courage, and connection. Ibrahim Traoré speech and Kamala Harris's tears remind us that behind every headline are human stories that deserve our attention and care. If this story moved you, if you feel the weight of hope and the power of empathy, please join this journey with us. Like, subscribe, and comment below. Share your thoughts, your feelings, your own stories of courage and compassion. Together, we can build a community that listens, learns, and acts with love. Because the world changes one heart at a time, and yours could be next. Thank you for being part of this moment. Your voice matters.